fellow compatriots, Zambia was not born yesterday. Zambia is 61 years old. And therefore, it must be common sense to all of us that at the age of 61, there must be evidence that we must point to show for the age that our nation has attained. A human being who is 61 is a grandfather or a grandmother. A human being who is at that age has so much to show for. Our economy is certainly not on the right path. And what is deeply troubling is that the issues that we are facing are not new to us. These are issues that have historically been known. These are issues that the very first cabinet, the founding cabinet of Zambia, addressed these issues. Let us remember that from 1953 to 1963, Zambia was part of the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. And the industrial sector was more developed in Zimbabwe, what we call Zimbabwe today, than it was in Zambia. That's why many of our founding fathers and mothers went to go and work in Salisbury, what we call Harare today. Zimbabwe's economy was far more advanced than all the other two economies in this federation, the Central African Federation. Even in terms of infrastructure, Zimbabwe was far more advanced. So at independence, in 1964, our founding fathers and mothers, who are not even as educated as this generation today, understood one thing, that Zambia belonged to them. And that in order to solve Zambia's problems, they were not start going to move from nation to nation with a beggar's bow. They decided to take the destiny of a new republic in their own hands. And after all, the fight for freedom, the fight for independence, was about self-determination. This is a very important point, self-determination. Meaning, the people of Zambia, across all the tribes of our nation, all races working together. Because Zambia is not just a republic for native Africans. We need to know that at the very beginning of the formation of our republic, we had many, many other nationalists that were here. Some were Greeks, some were of Indian origin, whose forefathers came to settle here for trade way before Zambia was founded. Some were Jews. You know about them. Some of them even participated in the struggle for independence. When you go to some compound like Desai, why is it called Desai? It's named after a freedom fighter. There are many Patels who are part of the struggle for independence. And therefore, when I'm talking about Zambia, Zambia does not belong to any particular tribe or any particular race. It belongs to all those who are part of the building of the republic. It's multiracial, multicultural, multi-tribal. And this must be the ringing phrase every day, that when we sing our national anthem, we are talking about a land of dignity, a land of work in unity. It is this unity which is reflected in our national anthem that must bind us together as one and focus on what we ought to do to build our republic. So, it was very clear first and foremost that at independence, the economy which was inherited by our founding cabinet was lopsided, and it was like a mono economy, heavily dependent on copper mining. And remember, industries were more developed in Rhodesia. So when Zambia became independent, it was clear to our founding fathers, the founding cabinet, that depending on southern Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, was going to be very difficult, because the white minority rule was still in charge of Zimbabwe then. And therefore, they embarked on an ambitious program. Nearly all industrial goods that we needed in Zambia were being imported from other countries. From Rhodesia itself, southern Rhodesia, among other countries in the region, and even overseas. And therefore, the government came up with a very simple policy. Import substitution. That was the goal of the first National Development Plan. Import substitution. So they came up with a strategy that over the first 5-year period, they are going to focus on beginning to substitute some of the products that were importing with locally produced products. So this entailed that industries needed to be developed. To develop industry, manpower was needed. Government came up with so many crash programs, manpower development programs, because not so many people were educated at independence. And then after looking at the industries that government wanted to focus on as a priority, those industries that have both forward and backward linkages, the industries that create jobs for the masses of our people, they realized that there was need at the same time to ensure that energy was developed. And all these projects, the Kariba Dam project, one of the biggest man-made lakes, was an idea that came from the founding cabinet, in which not so many were educated, but they understood one thing: Zambia before them. And that Zambia was only going to be put onto the path to economic growth and development by taking the destiny in their own hands. Remember the keyword: self-determination. Self-determination does not come with begging. You go to beg, you're looking, every time you're talking about donors, you're talking about investors. There can never be better investors than the people who live in this country. This nonsense, which I've sustained for 7 decades now, of talking about investors from outside, it must be bagged. We need to take the destiny in our own hands. Go to the Asian tigers. Look at Malaysia. Look at Singapore, which learned from us among other countries that have taken the destiny in their own hands. Look at India. India is even a nuclear power. India is registering a presence on the global stage. Indians are able to produce a vehicle. They produce vehicles, Tata and so forth like that. And here we are. We cannot even talk can't even talk about producing our own homemade bicycle in Zambia, when other countries are there. The countries that were under the same British. But understood that national development, patriotism, is what was needed in order for them to bring about massive development. So, knowing that as the economy grew, these were simple, issues to understand, that energy was going to be needed. They planned for energy. And Zambia became self-sufficient in 5 years. The Kariba Dam project became a marvel to look at. And were able to produce enough electricity to supply all industries. Then apart from that, they also adopted what we call target area development approaches, where you look at a place, in which area, if you're talking about beginning to produce our own juices, for instance, in which area can some of the crops grow better? They identified Mwinilunga. They went there and set up the Mwinilunga pineapple production. And remember, at one time this country assembled vehicles right here. We had Fiat vehicle assembly plant in Livingstone. And if all this, and remember also, by the way, there are many corporations that emerged, by the way, for information, right here in this country, in Zambia. From there, they looked at many other sectors. Mansa batteries, that there was need, because that's also part of energy provision. And they looked at the country in totality, and they ensured that each and every area had something to be identified with. This is what we call equitable distribution of resources, equitable distribution of factors that stimulate or that spark growth in an economy. We can learn from that example. And remember, at the end of the first plan, the aim was to create 200,000 jobs. But by the end of 5 years, the first National Development Plan, 532,000 jobs were created, more than they planned for. And therefore, there were more jobs than labor. Zambia was once in a position where we had more jobs than labor. And in order to ensure that labor was available, government embarked on a program to target school leavers. School dropouts were immediately taken up into the mining areas. They were taken up into agriculture, among other sectors. And manpower or job and training programs were entrenched, they were part of training. And we had many, many people who were placed under all these apprenticeship programs. And they were part of the building of the economy. And employment was overcome. And those are winning ways that we can learn from as a country. And by the time that the first national development plan was fully implemented, they went to the second national development plan. Again, now we are looking at other energy sectors. That, for instance, fuel. It became very costly for the country to depend on inland transportation of fuel. It was therefore under the second development plan, that the government decided to invest in the Tazama oil pipeline. Tazara in the same period. Now, one thing that I want to remind all of us is that as when Tazama was built, when Tazara was constructed, it was at the time that there was a global economic recession. But our ancestors, our founding fathers and mothers, didn't give economic recession as an excuse for failure. Now, today, we have a kind of leadership that when there's a problem, even the war involving Russia and Ukraine, that's not because of Ukraine, that's why we are failing. What kind of thinking is this? It is this thinking that we must share and say no to any excuses when it comes to delivery to the people, the basics that the people ask for, the basics that our country needs. Because this economy is depending on the people of Zambia. This economy is depending on you and I. We need to sit together. We need to tap into the wisdom, the collective wisdom that we have, into the ideas of all those young people who are struggling every morning, those who are doing metal fabrication. How can we put them on a path to growth from metal fabrication, from making ordinary gates? How can we enable them to start making proper wheelbarrows made in Zambia? How can we help them to start making plows right in Zambia? Because they have the skill that will demonstrate the tenacity, the resilience, to be able, and they are very creative. Look at what they're able to make many, many things from there. So we can look at all that in order to, we can even make a goal that at the end of 2 years, we will no longer import plows. Let the industrial sector develop. Now, when you develop industries rather than trading, ordinary trading, because when you embrace trading as the means to run the economy, you create jobs elsewhere. You export jobs to China because everything, toothpicks, is China. Go to all these Chinese stores that have littered this country. If you go Chinese stores, everywhere you go, everything's coming from China. You even go, even underwear, ordinary underwear, simple underwears. We cannot make all these things ordinary underwears. You go and bring all these things from China. Now, for China, from these underwear from China. These are simple things that we can make. And there must be a policy. For those things that we're able to make in Zambia, we must protect local industries and put tax, higher tariffs on those goods that we're able to make, which others want to bring from other countries. So we need to give incentives to all these local industries. If you look at countries like even South Africa here, not far from Zambia, 2 hours flight, South Africa even gives what are called import subsidies in order to promote exports from their country to other countries. Because they know when they give a subsidy to all those corporations that are producing the factories, when they export, the revenue, the forex earning to the countries is higher than even the subsidies that they give to factories, to their own industries. And this is part of giving the stimulus to the industries that are creating jobs. And these are the examples that we can look at from our own examples of success at one time. And as we have said before, the moment Tazama pipeline was opened, fuel became one of the cheapest in the region, if not in the entire continent of Africa. Why can't we go back to that? Dr. Kenneth Kaunda warned in 1990 to 1991 transition. He said, these people that are rising to power, these are mafias, I know them. They are going to sell everything that you have labored for. He said, I know them, they are crooks. They are conmen. He told us about this, but never understood. He said, please, just give me one more term so that you can mentor young nationalists that are going to take over from us. And I believe that if Zambia listened, I don't think that would have been where we've been as a country. Because everything that this country built was lost. in just one moment. Everything was grounded. Trade became the order. All the industries. Ndola was once one of the industrial destinations in Africa. All the industries, rock named themselves just shutting down like that. Dunlop, today, Dunlop has come back, but they are trading. They are not making tires, all those things here. They are trading, they have come as traders. So when they are coming to trade, because when you are setting up a business while you are trading, you only create a few jobs for people who are selling in the store. Whereas if you are producing, you are creating jobs first of all. In terms of backward linkages, you are creating jobs for suppliers of materials. Then to run the factories, you are also creating jobs for factory workers. And then to sell, you are also creating jobs for retail stores. But at the same time, you also create jobs for other SMEs who become like agents or distributors for a factory. That's how jobs are created in any country. So you cannot talk about investment, people coming to set up all these, the country is littered with malls, the country is littered with trading centers, and even the things that we are able to do. We have an international conman now. You go and get our own resources from NAPSA, you go and get the funds, and then you go and get some company that, no, we are going to use NAPSA funds, then we are going to do the Lusaka Ndola dual carriageway. Using our own funds, and you call them investors. What is so complicated about building roads when our own engineers, this country has sufficient engineers that can build our own roads? What is difficult for government to put Zambians together, Zambian corporations together? Get all construction companies together, let them form a consortium. That's what they could have done under this dual carriageway from Lusaka to Ndola. That's what they could have done. Let them form a consortium and let government facilitate the negotiations with NAPSA. If there are all those pension funds that need to be invested in such a project, let them invest in that. And let them be the ones to collect all those tolls. And talking about tolls, this is one of the national sagas. You do not get financial resources, you invest in a public road, and then you set tolls on the public roads. We have said this is daylight robbery from the people of Zambia. Tolls are only installed on alternative roads that are built under public-private partnerships everywhere in the world. That is a concept of tolling. You don't go and put toll gates on public roads. You don't do that. It's stupid to entertain this. That's the idea. Of course, the concept started with MMD government. And because the same people who served under the MMD came and hijacked the PF, just like the UPND has been hijacked. The UPND is suffering with all the people of Zambia. To call the current regime UPND is not fair. It's not UPND. What we have is not UPND. Those are just economic hitmen. The majority of them are them economic hitmen, chancellors who are not there. Opportunists. They don't understand the UPND vision. The same thing happened with the PF. The people who took over and hijacked the PF didn't understand the PF vision at all. They just came and all they were looking at is tenderpreneurship. That's so tender upon tenders. Because in tendering, that's how you pocket the money. These are people who care only about their stomachs and their bottomless pockets. And don't expect the country to be on the right path with people who don't care about the future. And also rebuilding the legacy of our founding fathers and mothers. And to every economy, there are two sides. To every economy, there are two sides. There's the monetary policy. There's the fiscal policy. The monetary policy has to do with the interest rates, has to do with the monetary policies, which in this case, under the central bank. We have said before that when you increase the state reserve ratio, you are effectively increasing the cost of money. Because that becomes the base in terms of the interest rates. Zambia's state ratio is among the highest. Go to Botswana. The countries where the cost of money is cheaper, the cost of capital is cheaper, the reserve ratio is around 3% to 5%. Look at Zambia, more than 10%. How do you expect growth with such a restrictive monetary policy? It's like a snake. Which is squeezing life out of the economy. squeezing life out of home economies. I talk about the economy. The economy is a collection of economies of each and every household. Before we even talk about corporations, and we talk at the micro level, then we begin to go up to the macro level. We can't talk about the macro before we address issues at micro level. So the entire monetary policy, the policy framework is wrong. It's built on the wrong foundation in a country which is struggling like ours. Then you go to fiscal policy. Fiscal policy has to do with government spending and the rate of tax. When taxation is high, consumption drops, aggregate demand drops. Aggregate demand drops. Because consumption is lower. People are not able, they don't have much disposable income. You are taking that income away from them. Tax is a cost of doing business. And then, if government spending is lowered, there is no money in the economy. That's what is happening. Money is not circulating. And what is even worse is that Zambia has moved from local common thieves to international thieves. These are international economy, the ones that we have. Those local thieves, village thieves, everything, whatever they store, we saw what they were doing. They were spending everything locally, eating with the people. Though we are not saying that is something to entertain. All we are saying is that there's a difference. Those were local thieves. Now you can't bring, we say, no, these local thieves are not enough. Let's go and bring international thieves in international economy. And we have seen what they have done. Because everything, these funds, but the corrupt elements are sharing funds outside the country. And that's why there are so many strange front companies that have come. These are just fronts. There are so many things, so many deals that are happening internationally that need investigation. And of which, if the Drug Enforcement Commission, the Anti-Corruption Commission, if they're not under state capture, those are the grand corrupt practices that they must be investigating. And who knows? Maybe some people have been trying to buy islands elsewhere. Money is moving there. Amassing wealth at the expense, on the blood and sweat of those common people, of the poor people. Nothing is proper about what is being done. Everything is elitist. In an economy where the majority are jobless, in an economy where the majority are struggling, then you go and build an elitist kind of economy. Those countries, like you go to Scandinavian countries, do not look at the reason why taxation there in terms of taxes are so high, because those economies are so advanced that they are service-driven. In economies that are service-driven, where much of the things that are driving the economy are like services, you expect such kind of high taxation and so because somebody just start a little service provision and they're making millions of dollars. And to service an economy which is service-based, service-driven, it's quite costly because it means that there must be more monitoring on the part of the government. And for government to monitor all that, more resources are required. These are simple things that we need to understand. And therefore, we cannot depend on taxation. High taxes. Pay as you earn is one tax that must be scrapped off. Scrap off pay as you earn. Because the people of Zambia, whether working or not, they are paying a lot already. How do you go to collect pay as you earn? At the same time, you go, if you look at the revenue from pay as you earn, because it's workers, 75% of Zambia's revenues is tax. Now, tax is not new money. Tax is recyclable. It's recyclable income. It's not new money. Remember, tax pay as you earn is deducted at the source. So you as a worker, you don't get to see it. It's retained. And then they retain it, then they recycle it. They are saying, no, they are paying salaries here and there, and so forth like that for civil service and the like. There's no growth from pay as you earn. It's recyclable. It must be scrapped off. Why? Because Zambia is resource rich. We can learn from those countries that are resource rich, that have scrapped off pay as you earn. You pay as you earn, but at the same time, if you own property, you are paying property rates, you are paying service fees. Here is an employer's paid pay as you earn, and mind you, if you are renting, the owners of property are passing on the cost to you as the renter, as a tenant. So you are paying the cost, you are the one who is paying, even service fees that councils collect. Now, what is a service fee? A service fee is collected for sewer systems, water supply, doing of the roads. That's why it's called a service fee. But at the same time, there's no garbage collection. You go and hire a private company to do garbage collection. In a country where each and every person owns property pays service fees. Let me explain to you the concept of site and service. The role of councils is to site new locations, new areas, then they service the areas. Kawata site and service is not just called site and service for fashion, no. It was one such project which the Lusaka City Council, which was once the richest company in Zambia, you didn't hear what I said. The Lusaka City Council was once the richest company in Zambia, richer than the mines. Now today, there's nothing to write home about this Lusaka City Council. So, Lusaka City Council, I cited the land in what you call Kabwata to take out the site and service. After siting, they serviced the land. They put the tarmac, they put the water, the sewer lines, demarcated the plots nicely, put the beacons, and then they advertised now to the people. Some, like in form of mortgage, they get and they begin to build there and so forth like that. That's why Kabwata is orderly in terms of the way they set up the houses were put up there. That's what you're paying service fees for. This country needs a very serious forensic audit. All councils must be placed under audit. And the audit I'm talking about is not just the audit, financial audit. We must also look at the operational audit and restructure the way these very important line giants, these are line giants, how they can be revived and be able to begin to tick again. And as long as central government does not interfere, we've been talking about decentralization. How can a country which has decentralized, in the name of CDF, they are taking CDF to all these communities, the same country as you see a minister of local government with a lot of corruption. Remember the saga of ambulances and all those things were procuring. They say, no, we are going to the central procurement because to be more efficient. What kind of nonsense is this? Can't we say enough is enough? Haven't you stolen enough? Can't you for once die a little for the nation? How can you expect the economy to grow when the entire structure of government is corrupt and breeds inefficiency and ineffectiveness? And that's why this can be abused. We have said before, Zambia has become like let me say this. Zambia has gone back to the BSA days, British African companies, where this country was owned by a company by one man, Cicero. Or Cicero, whatever pronunciation. He once owned company, because that BSA company belonged to one man, that British man, who wanted to extend the influence of the British Empire from Cape to Cairo. One man owned this country. One man sent people under his company BSA. Negotiated the Barros land, all those with the Barros land, all those concessions, the agreements. He tried to extend the same, but he faced resistance. Under Chishimba, he faced resistance under Mpezeni. By force. These kingdoms were defeated. Then he imposed this rule. It was about stealing the resources. One company taking the resources, building railway lines, running the mines, one company taking our resources. And the people were helpless. Now today, we entertain the same powers that were put in the BSA company, which are maintained by the colonial governors, including the Governor General, which were maintained again in that Schedule 2, which was prescribed by the British. Schedule 2, what we don't call the Constitution, because Zambia has no Constitution. Power is centralized. And then instead of running away from that kind of centralization, we keep entrenching more. We opposed what the PF hijackers did. I'm saying PF hijackers because those are not PF. Those ones who are there. That was not the PF government. Look at them. 80% the same people who are in the MMD. Even now. If I'm not mistaken, even almost 50%. They are in the MMD. All MMD governments. And today they are eating. All the idea is just to eat in the UPND. The UPND are suffering. People should have been cabinet ministers who suffered. Some of them were even imprisoned. Like Mwaritet, among others. They are outside. Those understand, at least they suffered. They may not have been like proper founder members, some of them, but at least they suffered, they understand the vision. So there are many things that we must be speaking to as a nation and be able to restore confidence and put this country back on the path. How can you be today? How can we go back to more centralization under the hijacked PF centralization, which has been entertained today? Because any sensible government, the first thing that it must do is to begin to reverse all those some of pieces of legislation that were enacted. How can you create? They created the Industrial Corporation, this IDC, and that's what is called IDC, Industrial Whatever Development Corporation. And then all state-owned enterprises, they are placed under it. ZESCO, ZTCM, name it. Who is the chairperson of the IDC? The president of Zambia, whoever is president. We are not talking about personalities here. No, we are not talking about people. I have no time to talk about anybody. I'm talking about the structure. I'm talking about the issues. When I'm saying the president, I'm not talking about the current president. I'm talking about the president as the law says. How can the president be a chairperson of IDC? Meaning, the same president who has executive powers, who appoints judges, who appoints cabinet ministers, who appoints commissioners of the Drug Enforcement Commission, ACC, the same president appoints the board of the IDC to oversee all statutory-owned corporations. What a country. Can't we see that this is wrong? These kind of regulations of statutes, they entrench the BSA, where one person begins to decide. So if this person makes a mistake, there is no debate. You can't debate with the president. So if one person makes a mistake or goes on the wrong path, the entire country goes on the wrong path. Because the IDC is in control of ZESCO, is in control of everything. So whatever mistake, whatever wrongs that are going on, the IDC must take responsibility. The failures of ZESCO, they are the failures of the IDC. How can we entertain this nonsense? How to export power? ZESCO, why do you export power? Because we have the kind of the same people who served under the MMD. Part of them, they also hijacked part of the PF. And then they have also hijacked the current regime. All they knew was selling things. So they find electricity, if there's nothing to sell, they sell. In that, they can't even sell the people. Selling the people is possible. Don't think that I'm joking. It's possible to sell people. Directly selling them. Idi Amin did it. Idi Amin sent people somewhere from foreign elements. This can happen in Zambia. Your people don't care. We have so many foreign nationalities in this country. Some of them are here illegally. Some came as refugees and they're here illegally. They're doing so many illegal things. It's easier because those people don't have a status. It's easier for any senseless person to go to them and say, please, we want to use you. Start moving with machetes. Whoever speaks, start following. Zambians are not violent people. This culture of violence we are seeing is foreign. And our country is too open. We need to take responsibility and stop these things that are happening. Stop taking electricity out of the country. Provide it to people. This flood shedding can end tomorrow. If only you are willing, if only you fear God. And it's about time that the people of Zambia began to pray the right prayers, to raise a cry unto God. Each and every woman, each and every young person, each and every man must be on their knees to pray to God Almighty. Let the cries of those widows, the cries of those orphans, the cries of those young people not in employment, let those cries reach heaven. And let heaven come down. God has a way of helping his people. Because the folk can be planning, I'll do this, I'll do this. But God is in charge. You are planning about tomorrow which is not promised to you. One of the blessings we use when I'm praying, one of the blessings, one of the brachot, we acknowledge that it's God who makes alive. He kills and makes alive. So that every morning we are reminded in our prayers that it's God who makes alive and it's God who kills. This must bring humility. Every leader must be humble himself or herself to know that God interferes in the affairs of nations. And not all nations are the same. Zambia is Zambia. Zambia is not Tanzania. Zambia is not Zimbabwe. Zambia is Zambia. There's a destiny in Zambia. Zambia has a destiny to be a lighthouse and to Africa, this continent of Africa. No wonder Zambia has been a midwife, birthing of nearly all the countries in the region. It's Zambia. Zambia once acted as president of Namibia. By then, President Tupia Banda was ambassador to him. He was president of Namibia on behalf of Zambia. That's how Zambia was respected by the international community. So Zambia can use her role as a midwife for these nations to be a leader again. Zambia was that voice in the Committee of Nations that was respected. And that glory can be reclaimed. But if you only put this country first, you can't talk about the growth. Growth without energy. Growth. I'm like Malaysia concerned growth. Some people are giving like a parent. You say, no, let's suffer. No, we are building. No, we are going to be eating beans. You eat, you come back. Here it's now 13 adults. You already go 13 adults. If it's good for you to eat meat, let it be good for every champion to eat beef. If it's good for you, Kusea, let every Zambian also be able to Kusea. If your Kusea is good, running the economy by your Kusea. These are pertinent questions that we must be asking ourselves and do sensible things. The energy crisis needs a complete over. Why do we need the Energy Regulation Board? It must be scrapped off. What are they regulating? Because that function, government can delegate it to councils, each and every district. There must be a department that can issue licenses to filling stations. You don't need an entire department, a huge agency to be talking about when to increase power or to increase all this this kind of nonsense. And how to plan? Before these jackers formed government, they were saying there must be predictability in the economy, stability and predictability. Now, here we are. Businesses can't plan. Every month you don't know whether the price of fuel will go down, whether it will go up, you don't know. You are creating uncertainties in an economy. Companies are folding. This is reality. Jobs are being lost. And one doesn't even know what that Minister of Labor does. Because the Minister of Labor must also be looking at the enforceability of these labor laws. There are many Zambians today who are working without contracts. And because of high levels of unemployment, they have no option but to just go and work. The government which is sensible, that Department of Labor, must be one of the most active departments to help those Zambian citizens who are working under some of these foreign-owned firms, including, of course, local-owned corporations, to ensure that there's compliance, there's enforceability of labor laws. Communication. Everything in this country doesn't appear to be working normally. Look at the internet today, even ordinary calls. How to run a business? You can't understand. Hello, what machine? Hello. Abantu namapena. Bale penya abantu. What machine? Hello. Internet. Hello. Why? Because you have a zikta where they want to, that law which was passed is an evil law. No, we need to listen. Cyber crimes. Of what economic value are some of these pieces of legislation? Of what agents are they? Before that cyber law, giving all these state institutions zikta to listen to conversation of the citizens, the system is jammed. You want to listen to everything. Because they have become insecure. Security is not in listening to what people are saying about you. Security is in delivering what you promised the people of Zambia. Incumbency is not defended by weight. You don't need 1 hour statements for statements. Look, power generation was at 3,000 megawatts, now it's 5,000. Look, unemployment rate was this, now it's this. Look, there were 30 schools, now there are 40. Look, we found 100 hospitals, now there are 200. That's how incumbency is defended. It's not defended by manipulation. It's not defended by listening to the police of the citizens. That method was tried, it never worked under the colonial government. The NIP government tried it with a special branch, it didn't work. They had to go when time to go came. Every government that has tried to do this, they have not succeeded. Why would you export electricity when people need it? And then some of the citizens, you have been rejoicing, oh, now we have put solar. Oh, no. This solar thing is a saga. Someone is benefiting. A time will come when there will be an audit to look at who are these people who are behind all these big solar corporations. We shall not be surprised to find that it's the same leaders who are behind all this. Even one created the Minister of Green Economy to prepare the minds. No. Now let's go green. We are talking about going green. When America, the most advanced economies, they are saying all the nonsense to these things. Look what Trump is, common sense. Just trying to good things, finding a way to just loot. How much can one loot? Can't there be enough? Can't enough? This energy saga must end. Otherwise, let the Almighty God begin to watch it, and every morning, each and every hour to watch over the wickedness. It's wickedness. To let the people suffer. Because when you are elected, you become the leaders. You are leaders over the people of Zambia, not the people of Namibia. And you think this is wrong. Ghana, government almost attempted to do that. The entire country stood up and they stopped that nonsense. We can't be taking something which is abnormal to have used. And then you have that, the most stupid statement ever over the past years, the most stupid statement. No, now clap for me, because now we have given you power from 2 hours to 3 hours. Nonsense. Is that something to clap about? We need to be angry. These are not ordinary times. Can you imagine this being at ease? If this is the mentality that the founding fathers and mothers of this country had, could we be here? Everything is down. This monitoring, that's monitoring, this and this. UNIP destroyed the economy, the very economy it built when they went into controls. Control everything. Special branch. Who is saying anything against counter? Who is saying, now it becomes about preservation of leaders instead of preserving the economy. Preserve the economy. Preserve jobs. Build agriculture. Roads. Schools. Why should a country where the patient-doctor ratio is high have doctors on the streets, nurses on the streets, but medicals on the streets? With such a high patient-doctor-patient ratio. These are things we must be talking about. And on how we can grow jobs. You cannot talk about no. Because we have employed teachers. We have employed nurses. No, that's not job growth. There is what is called in government the establishment. You have a hospital. They say the establishment in this hospital is 100 people. So meaning if there are 10 people, you need to employ 90 to make it 90. Meaning that this hospital is operating below the establishment. So when you fill that establishment, you can't say you have created jobs. No. And there is no government that can say we are creating jobs by employing people in the civil service. Donald Trump is streamlining the civil service, the federal government, and focusing on growth. Meaning growth is in the private sector. Growth is in the people themselves. You go to those SMEs, invest in them, let them grow jobs. Work on fiscal policies. Reduce taxation. Remove all these market levies from all these marketeers who are suffering. Market levies are useless. Why should those marketeers? Because those marketeers are selling something. Remember, when those marketeers are selling, they are bought from the farmers. So they are helping that growth from the farmers if they are selling tomato. They are actually even providing a service. Let them grow. If they grow, you see growth, they move into SMEs. Then it makes now sense that, okay, now here, we can make them contribute. And even then, it must be, we have been talking about profit-based kind of taxation. Pay as you earn must go. Corporate tax must reduce. No tax by law must be more than 15%. Corporate tax must reduce. Give room, give growth, give breathing space to companies. Zambian corporations especially must be prioritized. When you do all this, you are choking the company. That's why they are closing. As I said, tax is a cost to business. 30 to 7.5% pay as you earn. Companies must that, but government is returning that. Then the same companies must pay corporate tax. The same companies must pay this. Oh my goodness. The same companies, if they're importing things, they're paying duty, they're paying VAT, all kinds of taxation. Everybody goes tax. And you think there can be growth in such an economy? Never. It can never happen. So these jokes that must stop as a country. And I'm going back to communication. Communication must be cheaper. Now for them, everything, whenever, if they say, oh, more Zambians have cell phones now, let's introduce tax. Oh, now Zambians are using mobile money, let's introduce tax on mobile money. Even mobile money, somebody's not transferring money. Just for a pack of minimum for something to just eat, you tax. You follow everything. You are not following the people who are taking out the emeralds, who are taking out the gold from our country, who are taking copper. You give them holidays. You go and tax the poor people, the owners of the country. And you think can be blessed. You are attracting a curse directly under heaven. Mercy exalts the throne. Mercy. A king who is merciful. A leadership that is merciful. The throne will be exalted. You can't just be there. You can't just be there. No, as long as I'm there, I'm there. Count once even said, Bambi, Valeri lo quiva, ifwe tuleli le chalo. Bambi, Valeri la mayanda yabo, ifwe tuleli le chalo. Can't we put the country first? Mourn over those people who are dying because they have not eaten, who are dying because there's so much stress, so much anger in the nation right now. So much, people are just dropping dead. We need to examine all these things and be able to, the fear of God, to do for once the right thing. Stop this nonsense of let's listen to the people. You jam communication in the country. Free people. When people are free, when it's freedom, people appreciate the leadership. When there's freedom, people say, wow, this is what we want. Now, if you take away freedom, you want to listen to everything, you want to control everything. You want to show that you're in charge. There is no strongest policeman. It doesn't matter whether you take the strongest or the most boot-licking police kind of among the police, because we have so many trained professionals in defense and security wings. Very respected people. Now, if we want, as leaders, to only impose those that we think that every day they'll be praising us, we are making a mistake. There's no one instrument which is stronger than the people under God Almighty. Remember our national anthem. Our founding fathers and mothers had the fear of God. That's why in the national anthem, we are among the very few countries mentioning God, acknowledging the supremacy of God in our nation. Fellow citizens, once again remember that dawn is before the darkest hour. There's God in heaven. We can raise a cry peacefully. We don't need to even call, some people are not even worthy being mentioned. Instead, let's just raise a cry over our nation. God is not too far. God has hearkened surely the cries of the people. And true saviors must arise. Not all these forced to just rise. The same people are part of the so many wrong things whose history is embedded in shame. Because they think it's now easy. Not even me now can do this. Embedded in shame. Zambia needs all of us. Thank you.